Welcome back to the Samantha Show. I'm your host, Samantha. You can call me Sam. Just don't call me Sammy. And we are officially rolling here in November. I am just trying to find a free day so I can put up my Christmas tree. Yep, I'm that person. No, I don't wait until after Thanksgiving. I associate Thanksgiving with Christmas, and that means I want my house decorated, Christmas tree and all. I've just been so busy lately that I haven't really had time to put the tree up, but I think I'm going to do that soon. I don't love Halloween. Like, I'm kind of glad Halloween has come and gone, but this is like my season. Like, this is like, I am here for Mariah Carey and Pentatonics and Michael Bublé. Like, let's bring it on. Let's start singing all the time. Okay. Have you guys ever seen that Casey Musgraves Christmas special? It's a couple years old now, but it's super funny, super cute. So if you haven't seen the Casey Musgraves Christmas special, you got to go check that out. One of my other favorite Christmas shows to watch, Dolly Parton has a couple movies that she, like, typically every year she seasonally releases a movie around Christmas time. I always love watching those. Like, I think the first one was like Coat of Many Colors. And then there was like another one, super cute. If you like, get a box of tissues though, because you're going to need them. So I always love watching those. I'm not a big Hallmark movie person. Like, I can't get into that. So I don't do that. But those are some of my shows. I always watch the Casey Musgraves Christmas special. I always watch my Dolly Parton movies around Christmas. And then I'm just all about the music, yo. And I feel like I wasn't always this way. Like, this like came on like probably the last 5 to 8 years. We like really started getting into Christmas. So, but I'm in it now. Like, I'm in it. I love, like, my family. We always do, like, especially with my mom and dad, we always do like a lot of different Christmas fun things, looking at lights, going here, going there. And so it's just the best ever. And so we are fully in it. But November also is National Diabetes Awareness Month. And so I wanted to take time on this episode to share with you a little bit more about diabetes, specifically type 1. Before we get into that, however, we got to do the 3 things you need to know. Here's the first thing that you need to know. When you get home from the grocery store, take your bananas apart, because if you leave them connected at the stem, they ripen faster. But if you take them apart, they don't ripen as quickly. So that's a really great tip, except for the fact that we have one of those really cute little like banana bunch hangers in our kitchen. And when I get home from the grocery, I like to hang my bananas on that. So if they're all apart, it's just going to be a pile of bananas. I guess I could get like a cute decorative plate to put them on. I don't think I'm going to implement this thing you need to know, but this is good for like my cycle bar studio. I could let them know we have bananas that we give our riders after class, but when they get really brown, our studio owner, Natalie, she's fantastic. She doesn't want the brown bananas out, right? Like we don't want that. Although I love me a brown banana. But anyway, but I could tell her that we could take them apart and maybe the bananas would last longer without ripening too fast. So that's good to know. That's a thing you need to know. Take your bananas apart if you want them to like last longer. Okay. Green bell peppers with 3 bumps on the bottom are sweeter and better for eating, and peppers with 4 bumps on the bottom are firmer and better for cooking. Did not know this. I have never counted the bumps on the bottom of my pepper. Maybe I'll pay closer attention to that when I go to the store. I do enjoy eating green peppers raw. I enjoy red and yellow peppers, bell peppers on food, like sliced up, but I will go to town on some green bell peppers. So now I know I need to be looking for ones that have 3 bumps on the bottom because they're a little bit sweeter, better tasting. 3 bumps on the bottom, better for eating because they're a little bit sweeter. Peppers with 4 bumps on the bottom are firmer and better for cooking. Okay, the last thing that you need to know here. Okay, so you know how Dolly Parton's rock album is coming out? It's coming out on November 17th, but you can go to your local movie theater on November 15th which I believe is a Wednesday, and they're doing a special screening so you can get like a sneak peek of the album and hear these songs. I think it's like concert style, performance style, and watch it at the movie theater. So if you are into Dolly Parton or you're a fan or that sounds fun to you, November 15th, check it out. My mom and I already bought tickets. As soon as I saw this, I was like, I'm buying 2 tickets. I don't even know who I'm taking yet. I'm just going to get the tickets so that I have them. And I did that. And then I was like, you know what? This would be great for my mom to come with me. So my mom and I got tickets at our local movie theater to see it on November 15th. You can go see it at your theater. If you just like Google Dolly Parton rock album movie theater, like, look, we all know how to use Google. Look it up. You can find it. There's like a link that will take you to like her website. And then it'll also like, you can search your zip code and it'll show you all of the places where you can go see this. So, okay. So I wanted to talk to you today about diabetes. Please don't call it diabetes. Please don't call it diabetes. Okay. It's diabetes. I have been living with type 1 diabetes for 26 years. So I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 9 years old. And oh my gosh, is it 27 years? I have to do the math on that. I've been living with it for a while. Okay. And still to this day, when someone says diabetes, I cringe. There is this big stereotype or idea, I believe, when someone says diabetes, we think of someone who's overweight, who doesn't take care of themselves, yada, yada, yada. Like, it's just, I feel like society has painted this picture for us in our mind. And even though I live with type 1 diabetes, I still struggle to like say that out loud sometimes because this mental picture comes to my mind, even though I know that it's not that. I mean, it can be, obviously related to obesity and things like that if we start talking about type 2 diabetes. But like in general, like I know from living with it every single day that it's so much more than that. So my goal really this month is to share more about diabetes, not just type 1, but all types of diabetes, and hopefully break that stereotype, not just here on the podcast, but also through my social media channels and, doing some appearances in person and around town and stuff. So did you know the things you need to know, not know? So we're really familiar with type 1 diabetes. And then we have type 2 diabetes, which is what most people know about, or they have a mom who has an aunt who has a grandma who had diabetes, or a cat. Yeah, cats can get diabetes and dogs. True. So we know about type 1, type 2. We also are pretty familiar with gestational diabetes, which is diabetes that you get when you're pregnant. But there are actually more than just type 1, type 2, and gestational diabetes. There is maturity onset diabetes of the young. I don't know the details of that. There's neonatal diabetes. There's Wolfram syndrome. There's latent autoimmune diabetes in adults. There's type 3C diabetes. There's more. There's cystic fibrosis diabetes. Like, I'm looking at a list, like there's all these different types, and I'm not going to speak to the others because I don't know the details. I do know that I met a guy once at a bar. That's where I meet most of them. I met a guy once at a bar. That's how all my stories start. And but he was a diabetic, but he had pancreas damage. Like, he was in a car accident that had damaged his pancreas that left him with diabetes. So let me do my best to speak to kind of what that function of the organ and what that looks like. And look, I am not a medical professional, okay? But this is what I was shown when I was like 9 years old, the hospital. Okay. I still remember this. So there's this picture, right, of the pancreas. So you got this blood. So your blood is like flowing through your body, right? And then your cells in your body, they need fuel to function, to grow, to be healthy. And so they need that fuel from the blood to be their best selves. For your cells to live their best life, they have to have fuel and sugar and the food that we eat, right? So that is in your blood. Then your pancreas, that organ in your like kind of lower abdomen, your pancreas makes insulin. Insulin is a hormone, and what it does is it takes the sugar and the food from the blood, and it puts it into your cells. So I always there's this picture of little insulin guys that are holding a crossing guard sign. Look, this is what I remember from being 9 years old. So basically insulin is like the crossing guard. It takes the food, the energy, the sugar from the blood, it gets it to your cells so that your cells can function and be healthy. When you have type 1 diabetes, your body self-attacks. Your T cells, which are in your body to help fight off infection, which do great things for us, right? They end up kind of self-attacking the body, and they attack the beta cells, which produce the insulin. And your body destroys those beta cells, so then you can no longer produce insulin. So what happens then is this sugar is all getting stuck in the blood, right? And there's no way to get to your cells. So typically when someone has type 1 diabetes, let's say before they know it, so when they start to get sick, they lose a lot of weight because your body goes into starvation mode, because it's no longer, you don't have the crossing guard there anymore to feed the cells in your body. So typically when someone has type 1 undiagnosed, they're going to get really sick. So a lot of the signs and symptoms, this is really important just to know in general, signs and symptoms of type 1 diabetes. So you're eating, but you're losing weight. You're very thirsty all the time. You're going to the bathroom all the time. The problem with children getting diagnosed with type 1 diabetes is a lot of this sounds like kids in general, right? Like I have a child and I know that. So, you could say, okay, yeah, my child's losing weight. Well, they're running around more. They just started soccer, they're losing their baby fat, whatever that is. And they could say, yeah, they're really active. That's why they're so thirsty. They're going to the bathroom more because they're so thirsty, because they're extra active, all these things. So we kind of come up with these excuses in our mind when really the culprit is diabetes. It's not not to go, everybody doesn't need to go run check their children, but I think it's something to be aware of. And eventually what happens is, some of those first signs and symptoms are the weight loss, the excessive thirst, the frequent urination. But what can happen is as it progresses and gets worse, if it's left untreated, then someone will start to get very sick. Their body will start to go into diabetic ketoacidosis. And this is where we get red flag. We are entering the danger zone. And by danger zone, I mean absolutely life-threatening if left untreated. And so when we reach this point, someone will eventually start to get very ill. So I'm talking vomiting, sick, lethargic, clearly unwell. And so, at this point in time, it's time to go to the doctor. It's time to go to the doctor if you notice any of the signs and symptoms. The sooner you can catch it, the better. And then they usually do a finger prick, really simple, poke your finger, test your blood. And that will give them most of the time the immediate answer that you need right away. You go to the hospital, they start you on insulin. And when someone starts to get these signs and symptoms of type 1 diabetes and then they start to get treated, there's this huge turnaround and the life just comes back to them. They're just all of a sudden more life, better color in their face, healthier, gaining weight again, and all these things. So that's kind of what type 1 diabetes looks like. It's an autoimmune disease. So the body is self-attacking and no longer produces insulin. When you have type 1 diabetes, you have to take injectable insulin. There is no other way around it. You cannot diet and exercise your way out of type 1 diabetes. You are going to have to take shots. You can wear an insulin pump. Those are your options. I was or you could, no, that's it. That's what you got. You can take shots all day long, or you can wear an insulin pump. And I'll talk a little bit more about kind of what that looks like. So type 2 diabetes, I'm not going to get into type 2 a ton because I'm not super familiar with it. And if there's one thing having diabetes that I hate is when someone tries to speak to something that they don't know about. Okay. So I'm not going to try to do that with type 2 diabetes, although I can say it is a metabolic disorder and it kind of can come at different levels. So often the body either is not producing enough insulin or the body is producing the insulin, unlike in type 1, but it's not utilizing that insulin. There is this connection to obesity and type 2 diabetes, but that's not the only connection. It's hereditary, ethnicity, background. There are other things that can lead to type 2 diabetes. And so we can't just put this blanket statement on diabetes and be exercise and eat better and it's going away. Like that is just not always the case. Okay. So let's shut that down right now. If you listen to this podcast, like know right now that let's just change that mindset. Exercise and diet are 100% important for all diabetes as it is for everybody on this planet, and different things and different disorders and different diseases. Like you've got to be physically taking care of yourself or you are going to suffer the consequences one way or another. However, there are other things that can lead to type 2 diabetes too. And there's no cure for it out there. So, how it's managed, that's where things start to change. So often with type 2, so type 1, you have to take injectable insulin. There are no other options. Type 2, best case scenario, you can manage it with diet and exercise. That's the best case scenario. But sometimes that is not enough. Then you have to maybe take a pill medication. You do have to take injectable insulin. There are other injectable medications that can help type 2 diabetes. I'm sure you've seen ads on TV. So all of the things, gestational diabetes, which you get when you're pregnant, it's something you would work with like your OB on and kind of get that managed and taken care of and how that all looks. So it's so much more than diet and exercise. So along that same line, I thought that I would go ahead and share with you some of the different things that can impact blood sugars because people just don't know, and that's okay. That's why we got to educate. They think that it's pretty simple. Like you eat food, your blood sugar goes up, you exercise, it comes down. Like it's that simple, right? Oh, I love that joke. Yeah, it's not that simple. And that's not a funny joke because there's so much more that impacts those blood sugars. So, we know about food, right? Like higher carb, higher sugar. Well, it's going to rise the blood sugar. It's going to bring it up. But what we also have to consider with food is the amount of fat in it, the amount of protein, the amount of fiber, which absolutely impacts digestion time and how that affects our blood sugar level because it's all different. Caffeine can often raise the blood sugar, not all the time, but it can. Alcohol. Well, I've had my share of the alcohol days. Anyway, we've had some fun with that, but typically will make your blood sugar go up and then it'll make it come scary down. So alcohol can be really scary. That's why I don't drink much these days. But when you're 21, like you just don't care, now I care. The time that you eat your meal, dehydration, like all can impact blood sugar. Medications can impact blood sugar. So steroids are like scary spike your blood sugar. So for myself, like one time I had this allergic reaction to like a cat or a horse or hay or all of it. I don't know. I was like rubbing this kitten on my face. I was like riding a horse, which I never do. I was like in a barn, which is, it makes me itch thinking back to that. My entire face swelled up. My eyes swelled shut. So I had to go to the emergency room like, hi, what's happening? And they're like, let's give you a steroid shot. I'm like, let's not, because it's going to totally mess up my blood sugar. I'm like, as long as my throat's not closing, I'll wait this out with Benadryl. So steroid shots can really impact, not just steroid shots, steroid medication, right? Like if you have to take the steroid pill or something's going on, can greatly spike those blood sugars. So just kind of keeping that in mind. There are other things like timing that can drop blood sugars, exercise. So exercise, it's like we could do a whole podcast about how exercise impacts blood sugar. So when you think of like aerobic exercise, so this is going to be kind of like steady state cardio, like running or like riding a bike at a consistent pace and things like that, will often make the blood sugar drop. However, high intensity and like strength training will often spike blood sugar because your muscles, your body releases glycogen to kind of fuel that exercise and that movement. And so it'll spike the blood sugar, but then you drop hours later. So you have to just kind of think about all these things. And then just like some biological things. So like too little sleep, stress, illness can all make your blood sugar rise. Having a low blood sugar, 24 hours after having a low blood sugar, you are more likely to have another low blood sugar because your body is already depleted of the stored glycogen. So this is like very scientific here. I'm like basically a doctor, guys. Okay. But once you've had one low blood sugar, you are more likely to have a repeat low blood sugar within 24 hours. NDAM phenomenon, you're very familiar with that if you live in the type 1 diabetes community or the diabetes community in general, forgive me. And that's just like in the morning, your blood sugars tend to spike. if you wear an insulin pump or you have scar tissue, like all these things can impact the absorption of insulin that you're taking through injection and impact blood sugars, cause them to go high. Intramuscular insulin delivery. So if you accidentally shoot your insulin into a muscle, which causes it to work very quickly, can cause you to drop. Allergies can cause it to go up. Menstruation. Hey, ladies. Yeah, it's a effing nightmare on what it does to your blood sugars. Celiac disease, smoking can cause it to rise. So all these other things. Expired insulin, having an inaccurate blood sugar reading if you're using a continuous glucose monitor. Like, look, the list goes on. I can't even read it all. But I hope that me sharing this, you have a moment here to realize that diabetes is 24/7. Like everything that I just shared with you is like what we face every single day from the morning to the time we go to bed. So every single move that we as diabetics make involve a decision. It's constantly on your mind. We don't ever get to not think about it. So I teach cycling classes, right? Like my blood sugars are absolutely on my mind the whole time I teach. My process for getting ready to teach class starts an hour to 2 hours before I teach to ensure that my blood sugars can stay consistent and I can get through class. Like I have to prep that far in advance. So like when my teammate an hour, 30 minutes before class says, hey, I need a sub, like that's very difficult for me to do because if I have not set my blood sugars up properly, it can be hard to manage during class. So diabetes is 24/7. Like there's just so much that goes into it. The beautiful thing is though that we have seen incredible advancements in technology. So when I was first diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 1997, I took 2 shots a day. I took insulin, was basically called NPH, which was this long-acting insulin, which lasted me I think I took it twice a day. So lasted me the day. And then I took regular insulin, which was like a little bit more faster acting, but still had maybe 6 to 8 hours peak life. And what I had to eat then was incredibly regimented because you take your 2 shots in breakfast, you have to know what you're eating for the rest of the day. So I think about that too. Although now I'm a very habitual eater in general, so it's very easy for me to plan out what I'm going to eat all day. But like in 1997, when I was 9 years old and my parents were sending me off to school, like that's hard to manage a child. It's hard for an adult to manage. It'd be hard for somebody in college to manage. So that was 1997, but we've seen a lot of advancements. We got multiple daily injections, which is still a very common way to manage diabetes, type 1 diabetes, which is where you take a dose of long-acting insulin once a day, typically, and then you take these like little shots throughout the day of insulin. So sometimes I will go to multiple daily injections. If I need what I would call a pump break, where I am just sick of having a device connected to me 24/7, then I'll go on a pump break. But then you have to take a lot of shots. I mean, you could be taking anywhere from 7, 8 shots a day. So that can kind of be a lot, but a lot of people love managing diabetes in that way, which is cool. Those of us who live with diabetes, we're typically pretty type A. We like to be in control of everything. I guarantee, ask anybody who has type 1 diabetes, they're going to say, yeah, they're a control freak. We're just taught. That's just diabetes, I feel like, made us that way. So multiple daily injections. We also have insulin pumps, which is really great. Insulin pumps came out, oh my gosh, I can't say for sure. So I'm not going to try to spit out a year, but I feel like I got my first insulin pump when I was 14, 15. And my parents, I'm very, very fortunate to have parents who can afford a lot of this equipment, which, God, this is a whole nother conversation, right? About the affordability and the access to these incredible tools. So I've had an insulin pump for a long time, and they have different types of insulin pumps. And the pump uses fast-acting insulin, and it gives like this slow drip all day long. And that's nice because it's highly customizable in the sense that, sometimes you run a little bit higher in the morning, so you can pump up the amount of insulin you take in the morning. Typically afternoon, evening, you run a little bit lower, so you can back off the insulin. There's more freedom and win in what you eat as well, right? So you can just pump in your insulin. You wait like 15 minutes if you're like a very good diabetic. I say you're a good diabetic, you manage well. And then you can eat, whatever it is that you've taken the insulin for. There's always calculations, right, for how much insulin to take based on what you're eating. Everybody has their own formula, their own carb ratio is what we call it. So the amount of carbohydrates that you eat, how many units of insulin you need to cover those carbohydrates, it depends on the person. So, my carb ratio is typically 1 to 10. So for every 10 amount of carbs that I eat, I'm going to take 1 unit of insulin. But that could be totally different for somebody else who sits across the table from me. So the pump does all that calculation for you, which is really nice. On the shots, you have to do all that manual math. So that's kind of a difference in that as well. And what I think, honestly, one of the greatest pieces of technology that we have is the continuous glucose monitor. So a big part of diabetes in general is testing your blood sugar, right? To see where that level is at. And that in the most basic way is a finger prick onto a little machine that tells you what your blood sugar is. And it's always the most reliable way to see what your blood sugar is. But we do have what we call CGMs, continuous glucose monitors. And these are the devices you'll see me wear on my arm most of the time. That's my favorite place to wear it. And it is constantly monitoring my blood sugar. This is really nice because where the technology is at now, that CGM talks to my insulin pump and it makes these adjustments for me without me even having to think about it when it comes to the background insulin. Now, I still have to think when I'm going to eat something or do something like intense exercise and plan ahead, because insulin takes about 2 to 3 hours to peak and come out of your body, most of the fast-acting insulin. So we're always working on a 2 to 3 hour timeline here. But it can kind of help control blood sugar overall, especially overnight, because what's happening is the CGM is talking to the pump, it's sharing the blood sugar reading, and then the pump is adjusting based on algorithms how much insulin I need. If I need a little more, I need a little less to help keep that line as straight as possible. So love the CGM. The other cool thing about the CGM is they typically connect to phones. So if my pump is tucked away or hidden, I can still see that blood sugar on my phone, but then it also shares with like my mom and my husband. So if my blood sugar goes really low and I'm home alone, then my mom, my husband, they'll get alerts on their phone. If they see that it's low, they can send emergency paramedics to the house or wherever I'm at, whatever's going on. So that's really nice. It's great for children to have a CGM because when their kids at school, mom can see what's going on. The nurse at school could receive that information, that notification. So it's really great to see how far technology has come. And we have a lot of great things on the horizon as well. And this leads me to a charity that is really important to me, which is JDRF. It is formerly known as the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. However, like I said way many minutes ago, that type 1 diabetes doesn't just affect children. You can be diagnosed when you're a child and then you grow up. People are getting diagnosed with type 1 in their adult years. So calling it juvenile diabetes just doesn't cover it anymore. So JDRF changed their name to just the letters JDRF. And so this charity, I've been involved with it since I got diagnosed in 97. My parents have been very involved. We've done walk teams. They have an incredible ride program. They do galas, all kinds of fun stuff. JDRF's mission is to cure, prevent, and treat type 1 diabetes. So they are very much focused on the treatment and the cure of type 1 diabetes. So that's really their focus. There are a lot of things that JDRF is funding now to continue to advance the treatment and ultimately find a cure one day. But we're looking at beta cell encapsulation. So that would be putting healthy beta cells. Remember, the beta cells are what produce insulin into the body with an encapsulated outside packaging so the T cells can't get in and destroy it. So the beta cells can produce that insulin and not risk being attacked. There's beta cell replacement. They're working on beta cell regeneration. They're working on immune therapies, prevention. So they're funding all of this different research to continue the advancements and growth that we've already seen around type 1 diabetes. So I do a lot with JDRF, and specifically this month, I'm really excited. I took 2 of my big passions, and that is advocating and working with JDRF and also the lovely Cycle Bar. And we are doing a charity ride at my local studio, Cycle Bar Liberty Township, where on November 18th, I'm going to teach a class 9:30 a.m. Minimum donation of $10 to get donated back to JDRF to come ride and do class, but you can always donate more than that. So we're going to do that. But what's really cool is I know a whole handful of instructors who live with type 1 diabetes, and they teach at different cycle bars all over the country, and they're all doing rides for JDRF on the same weekend. So it's amazing. So I believe we have one happening in New York and one happening in Chicago and down in Nashville and in St. Louis and in Lexington. So all these cycle bars are going to do charity rides for JDRF and for National Diabetes Awareness Month. And it's just so amazing to see the community together. And one thing that I always say about the T1D community is that it's the best family you never want to be a part of. And it's so true. Like, we have an awesome T1D community on Instagram that we're connected, and there are people, like, we know each other. Like, we've kind of grown up together, even though we may not like live in the same place. Like, it's just diabetes unites us and it connects us because it's tough. Like, this is a hard disease to live with every single day. I think, I got diagnosed when I was 9. So I don't remember what it was like to not have diabetes, but that doesn't mean that it's not challenging. There have been a lot of nights, evenings are usually the worst, but a lot of like tears, a lot of like just feeling unwell, overcoming a lot of anxiety and fear. I place a huge portion of like my adult anxiety on growing up and living with type 1 diabetes. And so, I'm praying and hoping and fundraising for organizations like JDRF to help us find a cure and to get these advancements so that we can just continue to live a healthy, normal life. And you can with diabetes. I hope that when people see me, that's what they see. But know that it's not without a lot of hard work. It's not without a lot of hard days, hard mornings, hard nights, hard moments, scary moments. High blood sugar will damage the body long term. So if you have a lot of high blood sugars, like, you're facing diabetic retinopathy, which is going to affect your eyes, your kidneys, your digestion, your neuropathy, right? Diabetic neuropathy, like the feeling, like losing feelings in toes and stuff. Infections don't heal well. You get sick. It's harder to recover. So high blood sugar, it like causes all of these things. But then low blood sugar can be really scary, because low blood sugar can take you out in a matter of hours, minutes. So low blood sugar becomes a very quick emergency, like has to be treated right away, or it can be quite devastating. So, the tools and the resources are out there, but it's tough, and you can do everything right. You can do everything right. You can do everything by the book, and it still not work. And you still have crazy blood sugars, or you still get into an emergency situation. You can do everything one day and have perfect blood sugars and do it the exact same the next day, and it get messed up. And not know why, right? Because I gave you that list of factors, right? Like things that can impact blood sugars. Like, there's just so much. So have grace. If there's someone in your life who lives with diabetes, whether it's type 1, type 2, gestational, or any of those other diabetes that I listed, if somebody's living with diabetes, I would encourage you to embrace them with kindness, be open. For the love, please do not tell them to exercise and eat better to get rid of it. Can we just not say that? Okay. If they're dealing with type 2 and obesity is an issue, they know that too, right? Like, let's instead show up with kindness and support, sympathy for just realizing that it's so challenging to live with. And there's just so much more that goes into it than just diet and exercise. Although very important, it's just not all of it. So thank you guys so much for listening. I plan to share more, mostly on social media over this next month or so, but also maybe a little bit more on the podcast. If you have any questions about diabetes in general, please feel free to reach out, hit me up on the gram, send me an email, just don't call me Sammy@gmail.com. And I'm happy to just connect with you or anybody else if they need it in their family, for a friend. I'm here for it because we got to stick together in this. So thank you guys so much. I would encourage you to find your local JDRF chapter, get involved if you are passionate about this. If we cure one type of diabetes, we cure it all. Ideally, if we cure one autoimmune disease like diabetes, type 1 diabetes, we cure other autoimmune diseases. So it impacts the footprint, the impact is so much bigger than just one person living with type 1 diabetes or that just the type 1 diabetes community. Like it affects so many people, and we can advance and grow and make changes together across all types of diabetes, all autoimmune diseases. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you have a really great day because you deserve it.